All right, let's talk about a psychedelic trip. Actually, let's talk about the lessons that came from such a trip. I was on a camping trip for a week, and I felt called to go on that trip. That was really interesting. It was like I needed to go on that trip because I was in this rut. I had a very dense fog in my mind, and there was a lot of questions that I was struggling to answer. So I had to get up there just to disconnect, just to be in nature for once. And up there, throughout the week, with no power, no cell phone coverage, no water, no plumbing, nothing. You had to really go in the elements and survive. That provided something that I was not prepared for because it was so silent up there that I was able to listen to my heart. Simply sitting in a kayak in the middle of water, in the middle of the night, with fog all over the place. Only me and nature, listening to fish and beavers and all the different things happening in the woods at night. And I was able to just listen to my heart. That alone was transformational. I was seeing things that I was not seeing before. I could stop by the side of this water lily, and there was a spider in it. And I remember thinking about the spider. Like, why are you here in the middle of the water? We should help you out. We didn't. I actually placed him on a leaf. I figured if he got out there, he's probably able to get back, right? That's not the point. I started the week with this ceremony, and I take that very seriously. I prepared the sacrament, if you will, which I had prepared in capsules, and so that I knew exactly how big of a dose I received. I got down into the water and filled a kettle. I made a fire. I went into the woods to provide firewood. And every single part of that was very meaningful to me. I like to be traditional, I guess. I'm not sure why, but it was something about gathering the ingredients and really taking my time to honor the process. Because I knew it was going to be big. Now, it didn't go exactly how I planned because this was a camping trip where we were with other people. I've done this work with plant medicine for a long time, so I knew how I was going to react. Although I never know how I'm going to react. It always provides something that I was not expecting. It always shows you what you need to see, and it always goes in directions where you're not really prepared. You can never be too prepared. Not to mention that when I do this alone. And when you do that, you're left to your own devices trying to figure out how things work without an anchor to reality. And that ended up with me having this very codependent kind of thing with the dog. Me and the dog was simply laying on a rock by the end of the experience after I've been standing in camp for 5,000 years, just looking at nature. But I was sitting there, I drank the tea, and I was just looking at the water. And as I was looking at it, I started to hear the popping. Now, for me, I'm not sure if this is for other people or this is, I have no idea. But for me, when it sets in, when you're on the rise, if you will, when it is closing to the peak, because let's say that you go like this, and all of a sudden you go up and 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 up, and then you go back down, right? I have this constant popping going on in my cells and in everything in my body. And even if I'm trying to suppress it and not feel it or not have it happen, it happens. So I can't do anything about it. It's like when you have the popping in your ears, right? It just pops. You know what that feels like. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was more of a continuous opening of my senses of everything that was happening. So I was listening to the water, I was listening to the silence and the wind, and then I started to hear the pop, or the small pops, becoming stronger and stronger, and I felt like, okay, now it's happening. Now I'm starting to feel the effects of the tea. So I just stared at the tree line, and all of a sudden I saw that the shapes were starting to become more separated. It was like a polygon. It was almost as if the trees were unfinished 3D renders. So they were just stacked upon each other like blocks of polygons, like squares, right? And I closed my eyes, and the moment I closed my eyes, I saw this dragon. It was a beautiful dragon. It was not like a frightening thing. I just closed my eyes. I saw this dragon. It was coming kind of towards me like a swan, if that makes sense. Like they have this neck, right? The neck was facing me, so I saw this kind of approaching towards me, and it opened its neck. I'm not one to kind of put any meaning into that, but as it did, there was this intense blue, purple, red fractal pattern that just emerged, kind of like a kaleidoscope, if you know what I mean. What that is. When you look into a scope and you have all of these different patterns inside of that, and you can see all these different colors. That's what happens, or that happened when I closed my eyes and I saw this coming from the dragon. I didn't think a lot about that, and I just kept my eyes closed and I went into the experience, and I just was. I was just observing. I was just there to see what happened. The problem was, because I was alone, and because this was in the middle of the night, I couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do. If it was up to me, I would just put a very comfortable chair there with some blankets and some pillows and just a fold something over my eyes, just not see anything and just be there. But for some reason I forgot how to do that, so that's why it's really great to have a trip sitter where they can actually facilitate these things. Because of the kids and everything that was they were going to bed. I couldn't just simply go and pick up all the things I needed. And I didn't really plan for it because it was very like, now is the moment. This is the time. I have to do this now. But it was perfect. I didn't really see a lot during the actual experience. I saw the bond with the dog. I was bonding with the dog a lot. After that night, we were very close. I made him face some fears going into the water and stuff. It was really interesting. And I simply thought. I was just thinking. That's it. So when I was starting to get back down, I I lay down on a rock because I didn't want to wake anyone up. So I just lay down on a rock with the dog, and I just closed my eyes. Just tried to sleep, which is what I really love about that, by the way. When you're doing it natural, let me give you a context. If you're doing acid, you can't do this because acid is very much as is on those usage dosages doses. It's like it goes from zero and then poof, and then it just lasts forever. I didn't like that. I didn't like how forced I was to be in the experience. Well, naturally, doing it naturally with plant medicine and mushrooms, I can simply have the experience and then I can go to bed. If I plan it, I can have a camping trip where I start in the morning and by afternoon, I can be normal again and I can go to sleep as a normal person. That is not something that I can see happening with a lot of other substances. Uh, Although I have not tried every other substance, so I know that there are others that can do the same thing, but I'm very much leaning towards the natural part of it. But I went to sleep, and I guess I slept for like an hour or something, and then I just woke up, and I felt like the energy that I have right now is not. I don't feel like going to bed. So I got up and I had breakfast. The most interesting part of all this is that the effect kind of comes afterwards, where you are able to reflect on what you saw. That's where you can see all of the things that actually happened. So the day after, I was simply trying to get back to myself. I was walking around, I was just breathing the air, just being there. And then I started to think. And as I was playing with my daughter, I saw that my creativity was better, a lot better. She had a blast because we were so in the game. I was a kid again. I had nothing to kind of limit me from being a kid. So we had a great time. I saw my partner in a new light for the first time in a long time, where the love was intense. She thought it was something weird. Like, are you trying to break up with me? Why are you doing this now? Why are you so different? She knew why I was so different. But the new perspective that I had was really, really, really astounding. It was it was powerful. And one of the things that I really loved in that forest was that I could go in and just simply be in nature. So I went into the spot that I found where was a lot of good firewood. And one of these branches were chopped off from a tree and was still hanging on to the branches, or the branch that came out of it. So it was literally shaped like a hammer. I was like, that's a hammer. I need that. And I will bring out the essence of that hammer. So I brought it with me and I started to work on it in the camp. I have it out of my car right now, and I can't wait to see what will come out of that branch because it literally looks like a hammer. That's cool. That just tells me that the creativity has been boosted. I now see things that I didn't see before. I feel like I can communicate better than I could before. I could have a point that I wanted to make, and I could craft a story around it real time. I was able to really focus on my breath. And one of the things that this type of medicine really does is it forces you to be here now. In meditation, when you're breathing and you're trying to get into that zone of being now, plant medicine forces you to be there for thousands of years. That's not a bad thing necessarily. You can face your fears, and it will become bad if you try to resist them. But if you lean into them and if you accept them, magic happens, and you can stay in that now for a long time trying to figure out who you are. And just having that, simply that, to have that moment of many moments, simply being there, did miracles to my head, did miracles to my way of thinking. So after that, like this was in the beginning of the week, I was starting to really think about creative visualization and meditation and all the things that I really have a lot of interest in. Creative visualization is really interesting because it is putting a seed in your brain, a visual representation of what you want in life. Most people will focus on the problems. They have a very vivid image of what they have in life that they don't want. If you ask someone, what do you hate about life? They will most likely have a list. But if you ask people what they really want in life, many people will stop and they have to think. That's interesting because then they don't know where they're going. If you're using creative visualization, you're putting that image of what you want in your brain and you're working towards it. Now, in plant medicine, you are able to shape that and more or less real time shaping your neurons around it. Because it's like taking your brain and tossing it into a blender and then using that mush to organize whatever you want afterwards. Damn, I was hoping I can probably just. Damn. Hi. All right. That was my son, and we are going camping. As you see, this whole experience changed my entire life because now I see that nature itself is just powerful when it comes to ground yourself, center yourself, and see what actually matters and how it affects everything in your life. when you're going into this forest and you're just simply surviving, something happens. And that is, I just got chills. It's still going on. I really trust my intuition. And with the whole thing that I've been focusing on, I tend to trust that intuition because I think that intuition is a very misunderstood concept. But let's talk about the creative visualization, right? You have a thing that you're placing in your head and you're able to see it. You're placing that image of where you want to go, and it becomes a compass for everything you do in life, more or less, in short terms. And what happened when I did that is that I was provided with teachers. I was on this trip with a lot of different people, and these people, many of them were more focused on talking about the problems that they were facing instead of fixing the problem or talking about what they wanted and what they could do to achieve the goal they had, right? So we had a visitor, this guy, and I didn't really get a good impression of him the first night because we were just sitting there and he just came to camp, right? Everyone was drinking. Beside me, I was drinking water. People looked at me funny. But I didn't have the urge to drink alcohol. That's something that happens every time. I don't want to drink alcohol. I don't want to do any more drugs, if you want to classify it as that. And I smoke cigarettes. When I did that, my mouth turned so dry that I didn't want to smoke a lot. So it's a very good tool to kind of get out of bad habits. I didn't bite my fingernails, so they are growing back, and I didn't pull my beard, which is something that I did all the time. So many things happened, but I didn't really get a good impression of this guy. The next day, I started to talk to him, and we started to just speak about life. And I asked him questions as we were sitting there with the breakfast, and he started to share. What he shared was a story that brought everyone around that table to tears. Nobody had heard that story. And the 13-year-old that was sitting next to me asked me, "Why are you asking so many questions?" And I just looked at her and said, "Watch. Just watch. Experience this." And so we continued to talk. And as we did, the story unfolded, and I got to know this person on a very deep level, as did a lot of other people around me. But they didn't really didn't have the interest to ask the questions. They didn't have the interest to go deeper. They just listened. That's it. And that's something that I see I have a knack for. I am genuinely interested in listening to people's stories. And when I do that, I ask questions that leads them deeper into that feeling. When that happens, they share things that they don't really share with other people. And when that happens, it leads to them sharing the pain that they have gone through. But not just the pain, not in a complaining kind of way, but in a way where they see the wisdom of what they gained from the pain. And that is a very transformational thing to have happening. So we were sitting at the waterfront, looking at the stars, and we watched the sky, and he said that there's a satellite right there. I was a satellite? Looking up, and I saw this dot blinking white. And we called out to the other people, "Look, there's a satellite." And they, in their ignorance, and I would say that those who don't understand will mock the thing that they don't understand. They looked at the blinking thing and they said, "That's a plane. I can literally see KLM on the tail wing." And as they were mocking this concept, me and him were just turning our gaze back up, looking at it. And he said that, "Look at it now. In a few moments, it will cross the light of the sun and it will disappear." I'm like, "Okay, interesting." And lo and behold, a few seconds later, that dot disappeared. Right there. It just weren't there anymore. I was like, "Damn, that was a satellite." And then we saw a plane, which was blinking red and, what is it, blue? Or green? Or whatever? To symbolize the navigation thing, you know? It was a very interesting experience, and we talked into the wee hours of the day. Like, we talked until 6, 7 a.m. And I had really grown to know this guy. And in the days that followed, we were doing everything together. We were setting up camp, preparing for the rain that was going to come. We were tying knots. We were building firewood, setting up hammocks, um, preparing those to not get water into them if rain was to come. Really practical things that I realized that I hadn't really been utilizing in my life. So I was really interested in learning more. When he left, it was a very, it was kind of sad, but he left. And later that day, another couple came, and I was starting to talk to them. Same thing. And the people that was sitting around this table had known these people for years, years. But I asked questions, and I got to know them. And again, we were talking into the wee hours of the night, and we had talked about things that was so intimate that it transformed the relationship. And it was a fascinating thing to think, the thing to see. I got to know him, and he seemed to open himself a lot. I was like, this is interesting. This is very fascinating. So again, a new teacher had come, and I could learn a lot from him. He was actually a programmer, and we spoke the same language because I have some Python understanding and other programming languages. And I saw that as soon as I started to talk about these things, like using that lingo, he lit up. He was like, oh, someone I can talk to. I can actually talk to you. And I understood how it feels to go around and try to solve a programmatic problem in your head, trying to see how can I solve this issue? What structure do I need to do it? Is the logic there? Something missing? All that stuff. It was really fascinating. We talked about fears with her. She had so many fears that she was trying to conquer, but she did it. She went into the forest alone. She did not want to do that. She was chopping wood for the first time. She was doing a lot of things for the first time, and she was conquering fear. And I love seeing that. I just love seeing that. Last night, another person came. He came walking into the camp, and he just sat down on the rock. He started to speak. And he was speaking about the things in the world that was going wrong, but he was speaking in a very poetic kind of way. And I was drawn in. I was like, who is this guy? Right? But the other people around the table were like, walk away. We don't want you here. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Now, sure, this guy could have been a killer. He could have been there to kind of snuff us out. But I decided to go on an adventure with him. So I approached him. I said, we need to talk. And we left. We walked around the woods for 1.5 hours, talking about everything. And he had this amazing way of communicating stories, really going into the emotion of the story, really using his body language to tell the points and really going into it. He was a very Christian man, and I'm not Christian. I'm a very cosmocentric kind of person, right? But with my understanding of quantum physics, energies, and frequencies, I was able to see his parables and kind of translate that into the same truths that I knew without the dogma. And we had a very constructive conversation. We spoke for 1.5 hours, and I still don't know his name. That's fascinating. We talked about everything. I know his life story in the bullet points. He knew that about me. We had very deep conversations about everything that I can think of almost. But he was very much centered around God and Jesus. As the night came to a close and I had to go back to my camp, to my girlfriend and the friends, I saw this car approaching, and the car was actually for him. They stopped. He greeted them, and then he looked at me and he said, "Go over there and tell them what you are." I was like, "That's a weird thing to say." All right. I went over. I leaned in, and I said, "I'm very clear. This has been amazing." And I looked at him and I said, "Thank you." And then he said, "Tell them that you're a Christian." I was like, no, I'm not Christian. I'm clearer. Thank you for your perspectives. I really, really respect you for what you've shared and what we have talked about. And then he saw that his indoctrination speeches didn't take hold. So I thought afterwards, like, okay, that was simply just an enrollment kind of talk, but I got a lot out of it. I saw a completely different perspective than those I've had in the days that came before it, and it taught me so much. So now I see that I have teachers all over the place. I'm looking for teachers. I'm seeking them out. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I'm open to any and all ideas to see if it fits my way of seeing the world. Simply being of value to live from love and to be open-minded enough to see that maybe the things that I knew was not as firm as they were supposed to be, you know? Simply not limiting myself to one idea. And it's fascinating. That was kind of the bullet points, the short story of what I've learned. But I know that it will continue to bring fruits. It will continue to give me a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to act on and to bring into the world and, well, put simply, to manifest. Because with the whole creative visualization thing, and I'm not sure if I really got that to a point, but in creative visualization, you have a big, huge goal. On that path towards the goal, there is going to be a lot of things that you have to do. And if your vision of what you want is so strong that the universe will see it clearly, as they say, the universe will conspire to bring you what you want. And it will do so in different kind of ways that you might not expect. And for instance, I saw a moth, and as I was talking to this Christian, it landed on my cheek. It landed right here. And I was looking at him, and he was like, what the heck? Right? So it landed, and I just, right? I didn't think much of it. Then I came back to the camp, and all of a sudden there was two moths. One was sitting on this lamp, and I was just focusing on it. I was meditating on it. And then another one came. I was like, that too? Was the first thing that happened during that huge point in the conversation with the Christian, symbolized by the moth. Was that one event? And this is now either a second event or leading up to a second event? What is going on? But just being open to the signs. First of all, it's fun. It brings so much adventure. Like, the universe trying to tell me something with this, you know? And it just continued. The things that happened after the trip was all part of getting to a point where I understood a lesson so deeply that I can't avoid it. So the universe conspired in my favor through creative visualization, the Silva method, the plant medicine, my perspective of the universe, everything. It fascinates me to no end. It really does. And now I have to prepare myself because I am going to pick up my son and I'm going to provide him with warm clothing and some sleeping things. And then we are going to go into the forest and I'm going to see how he reacts to simply being at the whim of the nature. And we're going to learn a lot of things. We're going to learn how to make a fire out of whatever we find, how to forage for food, how to create shelter, how to do a lot of things. And as I was doing this, it kind of dawned on me that so many children, so many people don't have that practical sense of going out there and surviving in the woods and not knowing what it can provide. That I want to do that. I want to do way more of that. Taking people into the woods, plant medicine or not, and simply being. I'm looking forward to that. I actually said on that camping trip that this is going to be my life. So who knows? Let's see where that leads us. Well, I've been talking for 40 minutes and I've just brushed the surface, but I hope that you got anything from this. And if I can be of any service, let me know. Reach out. Have a fantastic day and take care of your freaking family. And I'll see you in the next one.